Hello, everybody, and welcome to the third tier maker on the Gregsynthbootlegs Queen Live Concert channel. This is Gregsynthbootlegs, and just to be upfront, I'm not feeling too hot right now. I'm sick as a dog. My throat hurts. Oh, my lymph nodes are swollen. My head hurts. So, yes, I'm operating like a battery that is unable to hold its charge, but I'm going to soldier on, and I feel good enough to be able to discuss Queen shows with these two fine gentlemen that are legends all over the world. According to websites that I've went on, um, and I think that people deserve to hear the Queen shows be discussed, because it's not just me that uploads shows and talks about them, but I also like to involve other people, because I like to talk about shows with other Queen fans, hear what they have to say, and do projects. And I think it's a very good thing that we're in sort of this era where we have the technology and the resources and the content available to have fun and to do stuff like this. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce my two guests on this tier maker for Queen. We're going to be discussing the 1974 Sheer Heart Attack tour leg that took place throughout Europe and the UK. And I hope it's going to be a fun one. I have a very good feeling that it's going to be great, and can't wait to discuss it. So I flipped the coin, and it came up heads. So I'll leave it to both of you to decide to whoever goes first to introduce themselves and talk about the Sheer Heart Attack tour. So go ahead. Whoever likes to go next.
Not
Hey, how's
me.
it going? Guys, it's me, Kieran. You probably remember me from the Queen TierMaker. I've been in this community for many years now. Maybe you know me from the Queen Discord. Or maybe you know me from uploading Genesis bootlegs on my channel. What can I say about it? It's a fun one. I think it's a bit of an overlooked one. It's not the most documented tour we have, but it's definitely a very interesting glimpse into this period of Queen where they were not quite at the level of success that they would be hitting the following year, with the Night of the Opera, but they're no longer more of this deeper cut kind of group, this opening act. They're starting to finally, I think, conquer territories. Doing what they can with the hits, Killer Queen, and all that. Yeah, this is the period where many could argue is one of the reasons Freddie did get his vocal nodules. Obviously not the only factor, but with the approach he kind of went with on his voice on this tour, it definitely wasn't doing him any favors. But it's a very interesting glimpse. Kieran Freddie sound this way because this is basically one of the only periods where he does. Yeah, that would be my take on the Sheer Heart Attack tour, at least this leg.
Alrighty then. Hi, my name is Joseph. I years ago participated in some of the original debates going on this channel. This is my first tier maker. I'm excited to be here. I have appeared on many different podcasts over the years, and I'm excited to talk about one of my favorite bands and one of my favorite eras of that band. Like Kieran said, this is a really great glimpse into this era of Queen. One of their first true headlining tours. A great set list covering the first three albums as well as their famous sort of 50s medley. Um, it's a great kind of peek into that era of the band, and I'm really excited to be talking about it with you guys.
For me, um, me and the Sheer Heart Attack tour of '74, I really do enjoy it. I like what I hear, but it's one of those things where after going back and re-listening to all the shows with fresh ears, and allowing a lot of time to pass, and basically really squeezing out as much listening experience as I can with these shows, um, I find that while I enjoy the shows in general and I like what I hear, um, this is really sort of like a build up to future tour legs, where the band are sort of like finding their feet. This is a new era. Obviously, you have a new set list. The shows are getting longer, and they're still raw. The band are still hungry, so you still get all the youthful energy that was all over the Queen 1 and the Queen 2 eras, which is fantastic. But there's a lot of things going on during these shows that will impact them in some way, shape, or form. And there's a lot of loose ends that thankfully will get tightened up as this tour leg progresses. And then when they go into the 75 legs of the Sheer Heart Attack tour. So basically, what you get with the 74 Sheer Heart Attack leg is a raw, youthful, hungry band that they're playing their asses off and they're trying to conquer the world, but there are speed bumps and obstacles getting thrown, in the middle of everything that sometimes may impair the prowess a bit, but they don't let that stop them. And yeah, as what Kieran said, Freddie had further changed and evolved his vocal style for the live shows during this time frame, and he started kind of doing that back on the Queen 2 era, but this is where it really starts to become apparent that, yeah, there is a shift in the way he's singing. He starts to sing more forcefully with a slightly darker tone.
Oh man, even a speaking voice. If you listen to the speeches in between shows, he's definitely intentionally darkening that voice.
Yeah, so he's putting on a more deeper, darker, masculine, macho, proto-macho sort of
Just a persona
vibe
on stage. Because
Yeah.
like if you listen to that Finnish interview we had, with the kid, the classic one, in that interview, Freddie, he's pretty cool as a cucumber. He's speaking with his normal light voice. There's nothing really off. But if you listen, like even on the Rainbow release, he's really darken it like that. Like you can hear him just trying to really darken it, trying to put on this persona. So it's definitely a very interesting period to hear.
Yeah, and yeah, it sounds cool what he does and the way he changes his approaches and deals with the material with that different persona voice. But it really, in the long run, not only was it unhealthy, but it eventually cost him his voice. And from the reports I was reading later on in 75, where he was barely able to speak after shows and then gets his nodule diagnosis. So even though he got diagnosed with the nodules in later part of February of 75, we can look at the changes in the tone and the approaches to the material from this leg specifically as sort of like why he got to that point. Because there are some subtle signs that something isn't right, and then there's other signs where if you listen to some of the performances, it's like, oh wow, something doesn't sound right, or yeah, I could tell it's not good or something. So it is a very interesting tour leg on a lot of fronts, and I cannot wait to discuss it.
Yeah.
So I'll begin things. Now we have the first show of the tour available to us, which is Manchester.
Yep.
Which
doesn't
is
always happen. That doesn't always happen. So
no, it doesn't always happen. You don't always get the first night of a tour available to listen to. So thank you to whoever taped that and shared it.
Yeah,
and an interesting listen, and it is.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Very,
yeah. Very less than ideal quality tape, but it's nice we had the documentation.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So yeah, obviously these guys are pointing out the quality. No, it's not that great, but especially the inferior source. but at least we have a decent documentation of the show in terms of the length, and it's definitely worth having this show available because yeah, it not only is it the first show of the tour, but you get the live debuts of some of these songs.
Oh, absolutely. We have the debut of all of the new Sheer Heart Attack material, but also some other things like March of the Black Queen.
Mm-hmm.
And in general, this opening show has some things that will become mainstays for Queen's tours for many years to come. For example, the whole idea of the medley, right? This is the first tour to have the medley idea. It's definitely in its very primitive stage here, but it's the blueprints for it. And even on later tours, they would continue to use Killer Queen in the medley, end the medley off with Bring Back That Leroy Brown. So this is the starting point of it, you could say. You also have the idea of putting In the Lap of the Gods Revisited as the closer, the big first stage anthem. So in general, this is a pretty historically important show for those reasons alone, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely, and I absolutely agree with everything there. For me in this show, it's a really strange show because
absolutely.
yes.
because okay, so from the start you have obviously it's common to have first tour night nerves. So obviously I'm not expecting the band to be 100% glued into everything. So I'm fairly forgiving on that front. But holy shit, I'm going through this and I'm like, man, there's a lot of sloppy playing through the whole show, missing cues on songs.
I have to wonder how rehearsed the band were. I mean, yeah, you have to remember how much Brian missed. Spending time with the band after the hepatitis and all that.
Yeah,
he was out of it for a while, right?
Yeah, because he got infected with hepatitis all the way back when they went to Australia back in early '74.
Yeah.
And ever since he got that, what was the vaccination or whatever, he was ill through the whole
North American Queen
tour.
Yeah.
He was ill through the whole Queen 2 tour in Europe and in North America. He's dealing with this. And then you read the stories about, he looks yellow and he collapses after shows. And so it's like, yeah, the poor guy had to deal with a lot here. And
yeah, absolutely. So I feel like this is kind of Brian getting back into the grooves of those things, because you can even hear during interviews with Brian from how he felt about that period. He was even unsure if the band wanted to keep him in the group, which is of course silly to think about now, but Brian was out of it for so long that he was worried like he would be replaced or something. But obviously we know that was never the case. That was just him overthinking this kind of stuff. But that's kind of the mindset Brian was kind of having at the time. So he finally starting to feel better. He's back in the groove of things. The band have not even released the new album Reminder. This first show is not only the live debut of all these new Sheer Heart Attack songs, but majority of them are brand new to the crowd. The album isn't going to be out for another week. The only thing the crowd is going to recognize is Flick of the Wrist and Killer Queen from the single. So, Now I'm Here, In the Lap of the Gods, Leroy Brown, Stone Cold Crazy, In the Lap of the Gods Revisited, etc. These are all brand new to the crowd. These are completely unheard. So you have to think of how lucky these people are hearing these songs before anyone else.
And if this is the first time these people have heard Now I'm Here, woof.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, since they wouldn't recognize it, they probably didn't notice anything was off at all. They'd probably be too much in awe, like, damn, this is a brand new song. We never heard this,
Yeah, then they hear, oh, it sounds different on the record live. Now you know. But so going back to the performance, it's clear that the band are very nervous through this whole show. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of sloppy moments, a lot of miscues.
Absolutely.
And then you have, Freddie doing the new vocal style, the darker one.
Absolutely.
And what this does is his voice naturally at this point is not that dark sounding.
Not even close.
If
you listen to the Sheer Heart Attack record, it is completely different to the European tour tone. It is without a doubt different. But I would say it's pretty interesting to note, at least for Manchester's case, Freddie's not going completely in with this dark tone. He's definitely already starting to use it, and it's all over this show. But if you compare this to the other shows from this tour, it's a lot more. He uses a lot more of his natural voice here, which is also interesting. So he's like, I still think he's kind of getting comfortable with it. Like, should I try this out? Maybe I should sing this like that, sing this like that. So in general, there's a lot I think to take apart from this show. So. At least in that regard.
Yeah, because he doesn't have a lot of major hiccups through the show in terms of the vocals, but
absolutely.
But it's one of those things where that style that he's doing definitely takes its toll in a lot of areas. Like when you listen through the show, you have like obviously now I'm here, very nervous and sloppy. So that's a great way to start off things. Then you have stuff like Ogre Battle where he's mixing conservative phrasing with the original phrasing. And now through this whole show, the energy's there from the band from the beginning. So it's not like they're playing. It's not like they're playing.
Half-assed, like
no,
some of
And
those work store shows.
they're not reserved.
Yeah.
No, they
yeah.
want to be there. They obviously want to be there. It's just there's a ton of nerves. And
you got to remember Queen, like we were saying earlier, this is one of their first headlining tours, so they're still not quite the most professional musicians quite yet. They're still kind of amateurs in that regard, They're still like, in their early to mid 20s at this point, so they're still really getting to the hang of things, All things considered, for an opening night, it's not horrible, It's a very spirited kind of show. Very interesting for all those historical reasons. It has a lot of one-off moments,
Yeah. So in itself, the show is it's definitely worth a listen because it's an important documentation in Queen's live career. But you're gonna get a lot of miscues. You're gonna get a lot of sloppy solo work. You're gonna get a lot of just like hesitant playing.
Unsure stuff,
Unsure. You got Brian's banjo ukulele's out of tune.
He's out of tune on Liar too, and
Liars.
He's not having fun with that.
Yeah, so you have the solo that's out of tune, and then you have in the Lap of the Gods Revisited, where Freddie's going for some falsetto and he attempts to sing funny, but it doesn't work, and then you have
the choruses, with all those very strange odd phrasing.
It's very random. He sounds uncomfortable, like he doesn't know how to approach this.
Yeah, which is why I wonder how much rehearsal time they had on this tour, with how unsure he kind of is. So
it is very. It's very weird. There's a lot of lackadaisical moments at this gig, but there's also a fair amount of good things too to kind of counterbalance. Like I feel that Father to Son is very good.
Oh, great version.
That's a very good.
White Queen, I think, is another pretty strong version. Flick of the Wrist, it has some of those studio melodies and pretty nice stuff.
Yeah, and then
Ogre Battle sounds great in this show.
Yeah, good version. Great
version. And then a unique performance. You had the debut of In the Lap of the Gods. Now it's a lot more bare bones compared to
none of those falsetto screams. It's the only version we have. But on the one hand, Freddie tries this studio falsetto melody for the only time. This is the only instance we have of him doing that. So.
Which is very, he sounds very good doing it, but
absolutely.
But obviously, by the time we get to later in the tour with Sheffield and others, that's gone. So it might have been just an early tour experiment just to see. But overall the gig, it's not horrible, but man, it's one of those shows where there's a lot of.
I would best describe it as rough around the edges, but they're having fun. So
so it's still.
I feel like it's kind of hard to hate this show, just how important it is, and
I don't hate it, but at the same time, it's like I gotta be honest. This is not a musically tight show at all.
No.
And
the tagline that I wrote for this show was "spirited but sloppy."
Yeah, absolutely.
And I can't disagree. So for me personally, because I know you guys got the link to the TierMaker on your side, so you can play around with it on your end. But for OBS, it's going to show me dragging the stuff up for the video. For me, because it's not horrible, but that sloppy playing and the nerves are just I can't just brush off a lot of that. But for me, I'm going to put Manchester at C. It's okay. There's still some good stuff on here, and the energy's there, so they want to be there. But man, kind of a shaky start in the tour, but not all of it's their fault. So, I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna put it in the C tier. It's okay, but flawed.
Yeah.
That's pretty fair.
I can see that.
Yeah. Joseph, I'll let you go next.
Yeah, I had it at a low B, but I cannot argue with that from what you guys have been saying. if we're calling C as like a sort of an average show, there's some good moments, but there are some down moments as well, and they all kind of average out, I'd say.
All right. For my ranking, I would have to say probably more in the lower B spectrum. I think C might be a little too harsh because C is where I think I would start putting some of those more mediocre work shows where Freddy isn't like completely horrible, but he also isn't anything remarkable. So, in my mind at least, I think C tier might be a tad too harsh for Manchester 74. It is true though that some of these sloppy moments are they're far out there, but with the great vibes I think of the show, the atmosphere of it, Freddy sounds great, and within that you're still getting a great set list. I would say low B is probably a more fair ranking in my case.
Okay, so low B and then C and then
Low B. So I would say average out that to the low B then. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's originally I had it a low B.
Yeah.
well, I was thinking like higher C, just because my reasoning for putting it there, and not because I thought about ranking it low B, and
I understand for sure.
and the two things that kept me from ranking it there, with a strong sort of cemented view is the fact that I'm looking at other shows on the tour that I have to compare this to.
Yeah.
And also, there's just so much stuff going on at this gig that's like, it's not just they're a little off here and there. It's just like like out of tune playing, missing the solos, bad intonation, bad thing. It's just it isn't like one or two little isolated moments.
Yeah. That's a problem with Manchester is its consistency. But
yeah,
the reason I would argue more for lower B rather than C is although the lows it can be pretty low, the highs are pretty exceptional stuff. This is still Queen in their prime. These highs, like I was saying, when you have some of those more mediocre work tour shows, which are more of the C tier category, those on one hand, they have low lows, but their highs aren't always even the most remarkable. Where as a show like Manchester, I think low B is more fair just because at least the highs of the show, the highs are, at least worth revisiting, like we mentioned, Father to Son, Flick of the Wrist, things like that,
Mm-hmm. See, for me, the reason I put it in a low B, there's one other show coming up that I specifically compare it to that I think is definitely a C, and I think this is a little bit better than that. That's why I put it low B.
I'll just spoil some of my things now. I don't think this tour has anything below low B, so we'll dive into that way.
For me, there's one show.
There's a couple that I'm a little sus on, but I can talk it out. But yeah, I can maybe see it upper C to low B, like in that kind of that little range there. I can maybe I'll bump it up to the lowest of B. But right now I have it at the highest of C. So I'll move that.
We can revisit.
We can revisit 2 against 1. Come on, man.
Well, this is how I work. I want but if because I'm a worker. But also so Kieran, you want to start Liverpool?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Liverpool. What can I say about this show? So, if you've been in this community for a long time, you would know that the old source of Liverpool used to be way worse, and it was also missing a lot more songs. The old source used to start with Flick of the Wrist, but a few years ago, we got from Procession to Flick of the Wrist, we got those, which was pretty nice to hear. The show is still incomplete. We're missing songs like Liar, things like that. But Liverpool, I would say, is without a doubt, I feel like a step up to Manchester. There's still a little bit rocky moments. The boys are still kind of figuring things out, but I think for sure in those few days, they're already starting, I think, to feel more comfortable with this new material. And you can find some really, really excellent stuff on this gig. Without a doubt, one of the definitive versions of Father to Son. You have one of the strongest versions of Flick of the Wrist, despite the lyric issues. You have one of the all-time great versions of Seven Seas Awry. So it's not the easiest to rank this gig because of those missing songs, but I feel like from what we have, I'm gonna have to give Liverpool an A. Just very fun show. lots of stuff worth revisiting for me, and those highs they're deadly, man. They're excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you have it at A. Okay. For me in Liverpool, yeah, definitely it's better than Manchester. Absolutely. They're more comfortable on stage. There's less sloppiness. There's less miscues. So overall, it is better, and in general. So
Mm-hmm.
definitely, it's definitely an improvement. And Freddie, Freddie's still playing around with his different vocal approaches, but he makes it work really well at this show.
I think he sounds great at Liverpool. I
Yeah.
think he puts on a great show for sure.
Yeah, he's not. Yeah, he's very strong overall. And what I also like about the show in general, now the really old bad copy that I got introduced to over a decade ago wasn't even close to doing the show justice.
No, not at
And
all.
oh, you missed like more song. Oh, it was awful.
Oh
But-
yeah, like I was saying.
but this copy is much more listenable and it's better. And if you're around for the old source, this is just this was like heaven listening to this compared to
Honestly, I feel like the B- ranking that some people give the tape quality is a little too harsh. Honestly, I would give this tape more of a B. I really don't think this is a hard tape to listen to at all. It's just the issue is it's very bass heavy, but I don't exactly think that's a bad thing. This is one of those tapes where you can really appreciate the finer work of John.
Yeah, this is a John Deacon tape, and I definitely made note of that when I was writing about the show a long time ago.
I enjoyed that about it. I noticed a lot more in his playing at the show because of that.
Yeah, and he's up front in the mix. He's very solid, and flick of the wrist. Freddie does a really good job on the vocals.
Despite the lyric issues, if he didn't have those lyric issues, I feel like most would determine this is the definitive one. It just sucks, We're so close to getting this top tier version, but no, Freddie is having a hard time at the office with the words. But
I mean, it's just one of those things where lyrics aren't a major concern. Just go out there and sing your ass off. But yeah, I always got good vibes.
Oh, absolutely.
From the show, even on the really really bad tape that was out there years ago.
It's those UK crowds, man. Like hometown territory. I feel like the band just have a lot more spirit and essence. I think in their playing.
Yeah, and it's like I get good vibes from listening to this because, especially now that we have a proper recording to go off of. It's like, yeah, is it perfect? No, but there's less issues with the instrumentation. There's less vocal issues, less sloppiness.
And man, that father to son, man, that can't be brushed under the rug.
Oh,
wow, what a version, man!
Yeah,
wow.
it definitely ranks among the better versions from this era, and everyone likes to point to the the tightness of the rhythm section and the passionate playing and rightfully so.
Brian slays on this version. I mean, there's a version that I would rank above this one, which I won't spoil. We'll get to that one later. That I think ranks is probably my favorite one. But in terms of just the solo section, not the vocals, I think Liverpool is probably Brian's best version of Father to Son ever. At least it's a candidate for it. He is having an incredible night at the office tonight, without a doubt.
Well, yeah, because I've definitely heard a lot of things said about that version, and people always point to it, in a very positive way, mainly the guitar playing, and I can definitely see why. And then you have some other great performances, son and daughter's great, and then you have Freddie's aggressive "Keep Yourself Alive" delivery. Seven Seeds is also one of the better ones from this era. So,
that's probably one of the best versions in general, like probably top 10, I would say. It's definitely up there. It's one of the best ones. So, unfortunately, it's incomplete though.
And that's the one thing about the show where, like, obviously, if we had the full thing, we'd all be having a ball and just absolutely enjoying it. But we can only go off what we have here. But I know the show generally, from the stuff that we're missing, it's safe to say everything's going to be good. There's no question. Like if what we hear on what's available is that good, that strong, then I think it's safe to assume that the unheard bits would be in the same ballpark. Um, as for my ranking, it's a definite improvement from Manchester. So, because it's right in that high C, low B kind of tier, and definitely Liverpool is miles better. Um, and I'm kind of thinking about what's going to go in in these tiers later on. So, um, Liverpool, I'm kind of torn between hot, like upper B to maybe low A, just because I think that stuff later on in the tour, when things are functioning right, are absolutely amazing and surpasses some of the stuff here. Even though this in itself is still a very good show.
Perhaps, but
So,
like I was saying, I would say the highs at the show really kind of sell it. When you
Mhm.
get kind of, I think when you break it down, when you look at the highlights, those highlights are very, very strong stuff, essential stuff if you're a fan of early Queen.
Okay. Yeah, I'll put it in the lowest of A. Just that may change as I go down, but I'm gonna keep it at the lowest of A for now.
Well, I didn't talk about this show yet.
So no, I was moving on to you because I haven't finished saying what I was gonna say, Pilgrim. So
Fight.
man, well, last time I did that, I busted my knuckles on my computer,
Yeah.
so I ain't gonna punch it anymore. So, but man, don't make me bring James E. Cornette on here. So go ahead, Joseph.
So, what I really like about this show, there's two sort of trios of songs that to me really stick out from this show. The opening trio of Now I'm Here, Ogre Battle, and Father to Son are just amazing. What a way out of the gate to just come out on fire for this show. Freddie sounds amazing. He's really forceful on a lot of his intonation, and unfortunately that would come back to haunt him a lot later in his career, particularly a few months later in his career. The band is absolutely on fire, and then the other trio of songs is one that Greg mentioned, which is Son and Daughter, Keep Yourself Alive, and Seven Seas of Rye. Just that trio of songs as well sounds amazing. This is a show that I wish we would have the full show for, because I can't imagine that Liar would be not a great version from this show. Particularly that song I wish we had. For me, I think this is an A show. It's there's some other shows we'll be talking about it coming up, and I can definitely see where Greg's coming from, kind of thinking out ahead as far as where I would rank all of the shows. But for me, I think this one has to be an A. I think it's an amazing step up from Manchester.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, vocally, Freddie's a lot tighter in a lot of places, and the band just sounds a lot more cohesive, really.
And the vibes, man. Like Bob notes on his site, on these UK shows, Roger and Brian, they're doing a lot more speeches. This is something I think a lot of people overlook, but by the following tour, the next year on Opera and all that, Roger and Brian are only introducing one song apiece. Eventually, Roger is basically introducing nothing at all. So it's actually kind of interesting to hear the whole band being a lot more, or perhaps their most chattiest ever on stage, because they, besides John, of course, he's never been the one to talk. But all three of those, they always kind of, they get their time to kind of shine and connect more with the crowd. So it really kind of adds to the nice atmosphere that the show provides.
Yeah, and just think about it, because we're hearing these shows from the Sheer Heart Attack tour. So Queen had been a professional band for a few years at this point, but just imagine in the mega utopia where we can hear extremely early Queen shows from prior to 73. Just imagine the intimate atmospheres at those venues, and just I'm willing to bet that all the members will be chatty on stage and just so that's one of those things where obviously I love all eras of live Queen. I can find great stuff on like any tour, and I enjoy what I listen to and the music, but something about the really early Queen stuff that we have available. I'm talking Queen 1, Queen 2, Sheer Heart Attack. Those first few years like that, where you hear the band having that really raw, youthful edge on
Yeah,
stage.
they're not this mega band yet. They're still
No, they're
still
playing
broke.
Yeah, because no, yeah, they're still in financial peril at
Yeah,
this point
they're
here.
still in debt, and I think Freddie and them, they were living just like in very small apartment flats, whatever. They were not living it up during this period at all.
No, this is part of superstardom, and it's like, yeah, they're playing their fucking asses off on these shows, and yes, down the road, as the years go on, yes, we'll get a lot of amazing performances. Yes, we'll get Freddie developing as a singer, and having some of his all-time best singing later on and on the live environment. But there's something about the early raw Queen stuff
Yeah.
where no matter how technically gifted someone is or how skillful one may become later on, because they get better and better at their role, you can't really manipulate raw youthful energy.
Oh
And
no, not at all.
no,
I feel like most people, you can definitely kind of sense that energy to these shows,
yeah,
and that's one of the reasons they're so enjoyable, for at least for me to revisit, because despite all these technical problems, whatever it may be, at the end of the day, putting aside all our Queen Live, nerdy stuff, whatever, all that kind of stuff that we're all into. At the end of the day, when we revisit this stuff, you can't deny it. It has that great energy to it, just that raw, youthful stuff.
yeah, because they're not phoning it in. I mean, there's not a single show I can honestly say from a certain stretch of period in this decade where they're phoning it in. Like there's
Yeah,
no
totally
like
agree.
no, they're like, yeah, you'll have shows that are better than others. Yes, you may have some quote unquote off nights or something, but
Yeah,
I don't think you'll ever
the
find a
essence is
comment
always
that
there.
says, you won't find a comment saying, man, they really phoned it in.
Yeah,
They did
I
not want to
agree.
be there.
I agree.
So Joseph, you were kind of finishing up Liverpool. Anything else you want to say about Liverpool?
Yeah, I mean, just like what you guys have been talking about, it's really what I love the most about this community is being able to hear bands like this early in their career, these formative years that are so important to most bands. Those are really the eras that I love listening to a lot of these bands. I mean, Queen. You look at those first couple of Kiss tours where it's a young, hungry band where they're really coming up, coming into their own, and it's those kind of early years with that fan base that they're growing. It's not when they would become these world beating superstars years later. And yes, those shows more often than not are great and they're on the top of their powers. But this is really my favorite era of these sort of bands to hear. And it's just it's amazing that all these years later, almost what this will be the 50th anniversary of these shows.
It's anniversary coming up.
That 50 years later, we're able to sit here and listen to these shows. It's just amazing to me.
Love it.
Yeah, so I think it's safe to say that we all agree that we're going to put Liverpool somewhere in the A tier.
Yeah, put that
Yeah.
sucker in A, man.
Yeah, well, I haven't moved it since you started talking
Let's
about
go.
it. So
Let's
yeah,
go.
let's go. So
We
man, I'm
finally
sorry.
agree.
Yeah, it's like I'm sorry I sound so sick, but I'm gonna soldier on. But so okay, next show is Sheffield, and Joseph. Since you sound incredibly enthusiastic, you can start it.
Okay. Well, as much as we all loved Liverpool, I think this is another little bit of a step down. Unfortunately, um, Freddie is a little weak on this show. He's trying to force his voice a little bit too much, in my opinion. I think it worked very well for Liverpool, but here, um, I think he's pushing it a little too hard. And here's really one of the first shows where the technical problems that Greg hinted at earlier come to bear in some of the performances here. There's a lot of feedback in this show, and there's a lot of off moments because of it. You can hear that the band's getting a little rattled because of those technical problems. There's some unclean playing. There's a lot of intonation issues for Freddie. I think that's kind of one of the big offenders. The band still they sound tight in a lot of places, but you can tell that a lot of those technical issues are getting to them a little bit. There's still some great performances on this show. Son and Daughter and Liar I kind of highlighted as some highlights. Um, they both sound great on this show, but particularly the first few songs Now I'm Here especially, it isn't a great start for the show. And unfortunately, of the 3 shows we've talked about so far, this is the second time I've mentioned Now I'm Here being an unfortunately slow, rough start for the show. I think that'll come back, I think, in a few places again. But I think um lap in the Lap of the Gods Revisited is also another one that's a little bit of a bit of a drawback. There's Freddy's just all over the place on that one. I mean, he didn't exactly know the words to that song in Sheffield that night, putting it mildly.
Oh, that's the
And
demo lyrics, but
oh yeah, sure, we'll go with that. And Brian is a little bit rough during that song too. But I mean, I think this is kind of back in a little bit of Manchester territory. I don't think it's as sloppy in some cases, but I can't go any higher than a low B for this show for me.
Yeah, for me with Sheffield, it's kind of unfortunate from listening back on this because, and this is why I put Manchester at upper C, and then because I would put Sheffield at the lowest of B's, because I do think it is a bit better than Manchester, but it's still full of flaws. But my issue with Sheffield is pretty much what you said, but also obviously when there's no major issues going on, there's some really good stuff. And the strongest stuff at this show is better than the strongest stuff at Manchester. Like, because obviously they've had a handful of shows under their belt by this point. So you don't have really the first 2 or nerves striking here. But at Sheffield, I'll start with the positives. Son and Daughter is amazing. That's a really good version of the song, one of the best on the tour. And yeah, Brian's just on fire. And it's one of those performances where I'm like, okay, now I understand why this era of Queen is so acclaimed for live performances. Because if you got a rhythm section that good on stage, don't change anything.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, like you said, Liar is awesome too. I love the Liar performance. But it's one of those things where if the whole show was at the level that Son and Daughter and Liar are at, I'd have no issues with ranking that show high on a tier maker. But in between all the good stuff, in between the good performances and the passion, you got a whole lot. I swear there's monitor issues at this show because what's going on is you got them not being in sync in spots. Like they're off time in places. They're not in sync in some spots. Like I swear there's monitor issues at this show. Like they can't hear themselves. I don't think Freddie could hear himself all that well because I've been reading stories about how they assembled, the world's greatest tech people, later on. So I can understand after going through these shows because I keep running into these speed bumps. But yeah, Now I'm Here. A lot of sloppy intonation, flubbing chords, but things do seem to get settle down a bit in the second half at least. So okay, at least they're finding their groove there. And then you have Ogre Battle, where, it's a good performance overall, and Freddie does do a good job, but yeah, you can tell that he's forcing his voice way more here compared to Liverpool and Manchester. Now, I don't know if that's because he's trying to put on the more macho voice or because he can't hear himself sing because of the tech issues, but there's a lot more forceful singing, and there's spots where his voice gives out, which is never a good thing. But if he's trying to oversing over monitor issues, I can sympathize. And then, but when he backs off that type of singing, he sounds very good. Like in The Lap of the Gods, soft tones all nice early on. So obviously, whatever's happening with his voice, or if there are issues, they're not major enough to affect the soft tones. So that still sounds very good. But man, Roger, going for those notes isn't a good idea. I'll leave it at that. Um, but yeah, it's mostly through the show you have tech issues and miscues, but also a lot of sour intonation from Freddie. I don't now. I love Freddie, and I do believe he is one of the absolute best singers that rock music's ever produced. And no, I don't believe he would intentionally sing bad on purpose, or or something. I honestly think there were problems at this show tech wise, because if he's constantly missing the pitch and then correcting notes midway through phrases, that's really signaling to me that he can't hear himself properly, or there's something wrong with the monitor, or there's tech issues or something, because there's a lot of good at this show when things are settled down, but man, when things aren't going smoothly, they don't sound good. So it's a real mixed bag, and it's unfortunate, because I truly think this show had potential to be up there with the Liverpool performance, especially son and daughter and Liar's performances. So with the inconsistency and the sour intonation and the mistakes like that, I'll put it slightly above Manchester in the form of the lowest of B on my tier maker, but that's as high as I can go, as low B. So I'll leave it at that. Kieran, how about you?
Yeah, so there's not too much for me to add, because I basically agree with most of these things. Band are definitely facing the monitor issues here. I think there's no denying that. Without a doubt, that's what's happening tonight. But in terms of the highlights, I'm surprised nobody mentioned Father to Son, because this is another top tier rendition. This is a brutal version, absolutely incredible. They already mentioned Son and Daughter, which is one of the all-time great versions. Pretty strong Seven Seas of Rye as well, strong Liar. So yeah, despite all the technical issues that are obviously out of the band's control, I still think they put on a very spirited, great show. Because of that, I'm less harsh than you guys. I feel the show is more slap in the middle B rather than a low B, because again, I feel like you kind of have the highs to really balance it out. I feel like it kind of evens it out. Plus, by the time you get to the second half of the show, most of those technical issues are eliminated. It's mainly a first half of the show kind of thing. So once they kind of settle out, the band are kind of pretty strong from there onwards. So I would rank the show in the middle of B.
Yeah, I just feel that some of those moments are like, oof. But
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of, there's some good. I'm not saying this is a throwaway show and should be thrown in the bin.
I just whenever I've revisited it, I've always come out of it, like, damn, that was fun. I enjoyed it. I've never listened to it and I was like, I don't really like that much. Like, despite its moments at the end when I finish the show, every time I'm like, yeah, that's a fun show. So because of those highs, I would say it's more middle tier B rather than lower, personally.
Yeah, and also, in the note, Jailhouse Rock's fun, and that's a great. So obviously, they didn't let the issues slow them down, because they still sound enthusiastic at the end of the night. So
yeah. I do wish they played the full medley on this leg. This is actually they never played the full Jailhouse Rock medley on the European leg, which is a damn shame.
That came really in Japan.
Yeah, Japan, and also at what's the incomplete one? Santa Monica. They do a bit of it here, but that version's incomplete.
They do a little bit of it on the mainland Europe shows, like The Hague. They add a couple more of the songs to it.
I think like with terms of vocal snippets, yeah, but like in terms of like the Stupid Cupid, Bebop Palula, it's not done at all on the European leg, unfortunately, which is a shame. But yeah, middle of the tier B.
Well, you're quite kind to that show. So are you going to be kind to the next one in the form of Bradford?
Would you like me to introduce this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Bradford. This is one of the weakest nights of the tour, for sure. Nobody really wants to revisit the show because the tape sounds like shit. Sounds horrible, this tape. so bad. Not only is it distorted through the roof, but I don't know, it just has pretty bad dynamics. There's yeah. But within that, this is one of those shows where you can finally tell the vocal technique is doing no favors to Freddie at all. This is probably out of all of 1974, this is probably where he's struggling the most using that dark tone. This show is not the kindness for him. He's obviously not shit tonight. It's not like a jazz show or anything where you're like, damn, he sounds bad. It's more of just like, yeah, something sounds, a bit off. He's definitely not 100% with his voice. And on top of that, more technical problems. So yeah, clearly this is where the band's amateurness is, I think, really showing. They're still not professional enough to kind of work out these kinks. Who knows if they had some like faulty monitors or something during this period? We'll never know the answer to this question, but you have to wonder what was going on behind the scenes during these shows, because the fact that this is a reoccurring thing, you have to wonder if they just had something wrong with their equipment or something at the time. But yeah, despite that, there's a few highlights here and there. You do have Freddie still trying the studio notes on Flick of the Wrist, taking it on, things like that. But within that, you have a fucking shitty son and daughter with horrible harmonies. And
Which
then
is a rarity, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, for sure. So that has to be a monitor issue, because Queen were always known, at least in the 70s, for their fantastic live harmonies, especially the three of those guys making that such great sound. For them to sound that sour, something was definitely up that night for that to happen. But you also have Brian, getting his hair stuck in the fretboard, as Greg likes to describe it during the solo. But yeah, this show kind of makes me scratch my head from time to time. But within the cringe-inducing moments, this is still early Queen. The passion's still there. It's not like some of those mid-'80s shows where I'm like, yeah, they care more about the paycheck than, the performance at the end of the day. At least at this show, I still feel that the passion's there. It's just, something was off this night. This is one of those off nights that we mentioned earlier. The spirit's there, but yeah, things are not working out for them, unfortunately. So because of that, I would have to give the show the lowest end of B's.
Oh, Lord. Me and Bradford. Where to begin here?
I feel a soliloquy coming on.
Well, in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, about to...
Forgive me, Father, for I am about to sin.
Yes, and poor Freddie committed a lot of sins at this show with all the bad intonation and shit going on, but... Okay, so Bradford and I, it's one of those shows where, before I revisited and uploaded a better copy, because I had a awful copy that was on my channel for years and years and years and years. And then somebody's name, who I will not mention, who is actually in the TierMaker right now, and who hails from the Great White North, decided to take the gig and actually fix the pitch and made it a lot more listenable. So thank you for that. So that's the copy I used, because I hate hearing shit playing at the wrong speed. And plus you fixed up some stuff too on it, which is great. So yes. So I'm just getting the positives out of the way. A very strange show. That's all I can say, because you would think at this point, this is, a week into the tour or something? You'd think that they would have some stuff nailed down and issues sorted out. Nope. Like now I'm here, like, what the hell?
Like I said about the Sheffield show, somehow it will get worse.
I'm like, what the hell? But yeah, But yeah, the band got a sync, and you got Freddie struggling. Like the stability is wonky, the intonation's off. It's like, so yeah, monitor issues, questionable singing technique, whatever the case, and it isn't working. And like just going through the show, on the old copy, I actually had a higher view of the show back then. Like on the older versions. Like, I thought, it's a good show. Got the best from 74, but it's good. I like it. I go back and listen to it nowadays, with the better copy, and you know.
Also more experience. You know, you know a lot more about shows than you did 11, 12 years ago. So
Yeah, because
the benefit of time.
Yeah, because I turned 34 in less than 3 months,
Yeah.
and so I'm getting old, and you know, so it's like you learn about things as you get older, and you know, I learned my mortality and everything, so I got to make sure I'm doing the best job I can. But no, I sit through the show nowadays, you know, especially on the, you know, I listened to it once before I did this, and I also listened to it 2 more times when I was working on the upload I did, earlier last year, and I'm like, wow, I don't remember the show being this off.
Hmm.
So then I go back and listen to it, and I'm like, man, there's a lot of off moments. White Queen. I mean, it's not a bad version, and the music's still good, but you got the feedback.
I love the solo on that version actually.
But yeah, you got the feedback issues on it.
Mm-hmm.
And Freddie pushing his voice too hard. And then in the lap of the gods, so you got Freddie making up shit on the piano. That doesn't fit. You got Roger experimenting with tunings on notes that I don't even know exist. But at least the solo, Brian's solo's better because the one at Sheffield is awful. So it's just, it's a really weird show where, yeah, some things are better here than Sheffield, but man, there's other stuff that's worse, and then more issues crop up. And like, yeah, son and daughter, that is one of the worst versions of the song because you have the off harmonies and it's the playing. Yes, it's creative and energetic, but it's not all clean. And
probably is the worst. I don't know what could be worse. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a version that I wouldn't go back to just to hear prowess from the band.
It's definitely a version of all time.
Oh yeah, it's something.
It's
a version.
It definitely exists.
Yeah, it definitely exists.
Oh yeah, you know about that son and daughter performance they played at Bradford. What about it? Well, it exists. They played it.
It's there.
It's there. Now keep yourself alive. To kind of flip the script here. Keep yourself alive is an improvement on that. That's fine. Seven Seas Awry. I don't know what happened here, but it sounds like the band finally got out of their I don't want to say stupor, but they're like, oh shit, we got issues here. We got to play this song. Well, Seven Seas is very good from this show. Stone Cold Crazy is another good one. And Liar, I do like this version, even though it's a little more laid back and low key compared to Sheffield, but it's still perfectly fine for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then In the Lap of the Gods Revisited, it's not perfect, but it sounds better than the previous few versions.
Yeah, you can definitely tell he's starting to settle in and get more comfortable singing it live.
Yeah,
and he learned the lyrics.
Yeah. Hey, he said, hey, I got to read the album lyrics, not the demo lyrics.
He finally read the inner sleeve.
Yeah. Hey,
the album isn't out yet.
No, it would be.
He got an advanced pressing.
Yeah.
It's a promo copy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Big Spender. Oh man, going off unplanned directions on that A4 belt, love it. And but then the last two, Modern Times and Jealous Rock, are energetic and they're fun to listen. So it's like, man, what a strange show because there's a lot of good, but there's a lot of off moments and it really drags the show down. So it's like, no, it's not the worst thing that they've done, but it's definitely not something I would go back to and cheer for the show on the sidelines or anything. And it's not something that I would recommend to somebody really as a whole. I'll just say, hey, okay, there are a few good performances, but other than that, it exists. So for me, it's going in B tier, but as I think about it, because I had Sheffield lowest to B. I really think because of the issues at this show and the fact that the standouts at this one aren't quite as good as the Sheffield ones, and you have even more sloppiness. I'm actually going to drop Bradford below Sheffield and raise Sheffield up slightly. So I will put Bradford as the lowest B, and then Sheffield will be lower B, but not the lowest B. So I will put Bradford actually a little worse.
See, I'm going to argue with you here. I think this is a C tier show.
Really?
This is the one. This is the only one that I put in C tier. And
Ouch.
I don't know if I can fully blame the band. Like we said, there's so many issues. Monitor-wise, tech-wise, sound-wise. I think this is the worst show of the tour. I really do. This is, to me, what you were trying to argue for Manchester. This is the one for me. I think right from the gate, Now I'm Here sounds awful. Ogre Battle is iffy. Father to Son is just out the gate really bad. And they kind of gel later in the song, but still. White Queen has a bunch of feedback issues. I mean, as the show goes on, it really doesn't get better. I mean, in the Lap of the Gods, Freddie's piano is just all over the place. Roger is just not hitting the screams right. I mean, what is going on in this show? It's just not good. Son and Daughter is so bad. What is going on here? Big Spender, like you said, is just all over the place. This is a C tier show, guys. This is a C tier show. I will not hear anything other than this is a C tier show. I'm not gonna blame it all on the band, but it doesn't make it any better. I feel bad for them, but here's me playing a sad song for them on the world's smallest violin. You still sucked. Even though the monitor may have been the cause of it, they still played the wrong notes. They still sang the wrong notes. I can feel bad for them and still say it's not a good show. There are some really good shows on this leg of the tour. This is not one of them. Greg, you're going to laugh your ass off when I say this. This rivals Fukuoka for one of the most infuriating listens I've ever had. It's not nearly as bad as that show.
Yeah, let's not
it's
put
not
those on the
nearly
same
as
level.
bad as that show, but just the absolute joy I was getting from listening to this tour so far. And then I got to Bradford and I just said, what the hell is going on?
Skip the show.
It doesn't help that Bradford's tape is so bad too. I feel
It does not. It does not.
Like it just makes it kind of a more depressing.
Exactly.
It's
just
really
like,
not a nice sounding tape. I feel like if we got a better copy, there would probably be a bit more enjoyment within that.
It probably would be. I would be willing to reevaluate.
Really, yeah, the tape I think really makes it just. You never want to revisit Bradford. Just
no.
Show isn't great and the tape sucks. So it's like forgettable.
So just
you know,
for all of those reasons, I will push you guys that this is a C tier show.
Yeah, I thought I was harsh. I thought I was harsh.
No, I totally get it, but like I said before, I still feel like the highs are excellent. So
let's wait.
But they're not as high as some. But they're not as high as some of the other shows we talked about. That's my only thing.
Well, let's go back because I was making the case for Manchester being C because they're so sloppy and everything. How would you compare Bradford to Manchester? Is it worse overall?
Yes.
That's a tough question. Manchester is sloppier.
Manchester, yeah.
Manchester's sloppier for the band, but Freddie is worse at Bradford. So Freddie plus still sloppy band moments at Bradford. Bradford's probably the weaker show. Probably the weakest show of 1974 in general.
Okay, because I have on my TierMaker, Manchester is at high C. I had Bradford at lowest of B, and if Bradford is because because the way I was looking at it was, look, there's a lot of bad shit on this show. Absolutely, that son and daughter is unforgivable. But
Yeah, at least you do actually have one of the stronger versions of Seven Seas, for example, which is always a nice one to.
and that's the thing that makes it difficult because there are things worse here than Manchester. I totally agree, and everything Joseph said, I don't disagree with.
Maybe at this point, just trade Bradford and Manchester on the tier maker because me and Joseph, we were already arguing that Manchester isn't even C. So if we're willing to compromise, let's just trade Manchester and Bradford's spot, and then boom, there you go.
Oh we're gonna continue the war because they're both shit.
Greg, here's my argument. Going song for song, but Now I'm Here was a bad sticking point at both shows. I'd argue Bradford's Now I'm Here was worse.
I agree.
I would say
probably better at Manchester.
Ogre Battle's better at Manchester. I mean, Father to Son is better at Manchester. I think you go through a lot of these songs, you're gonna find song for song.
Yeah, Manchester probably has
better.
More picks. Yeah, I agree.
I'll
put Manchester above Bradford.
All right. So okay. But if Bradford has better stuff on it, like there's other songs that are better compared to Manchester, but they're still worse.
It has lower lows though.
Lower lows and higher highs. So it's
Bradford, actually, I don't know. I would argue Manchester has the higher highs, and then Bradford has the lower lows. For example, we were going back to let's say, I don't know, Flick of the Wrist. That's probably better than anything at Bradford when it comes to Manchester. Or Father to Son at Manchester. That's probably better than anything at Bradford. So I think Manchester.
Crazy.
Yeah, I would say Manchester probably has the higher highs, and then Bradford has the lower lows. So when it comes down to that, I think Bradford's the weakest show of 74.
Ouch. So are they both C tier shows?
I would rather us put Manchester up to low B, and since you guys are kind of pushing more for that C for Bradford, then probably just put Bradford in the high C if that's what you're so concerned about. Because you still have the two of us. We were arguing from the start that Manchester is low B. So
yeah.
I think if we're trying to compromise it.
Well, just to let you know, I'm old and I'm sick and I think differently, so it sometimes doesn't process.
What I'm agreeing with Kieran here, we should have Manchester low B, Bradford high C, with Greg's strong objection highly and duly noted.
No. That is not what I'm saying. No, what I'm saying is
I think just trying to agree more. Like when you kind of break it down like that, I think like when you analyze them more like that, like what Joseph was saying, if you go song by song, I think you start to realize more that Manchester's the better show. It's got to be.
It's got the first tour nerves and stuff, but
I'll take it over Bradford, man.
But Bradford's got like if there's stuff that's like if they're not screwing up at Bradford, there's good stuff.
Yeah.
And but then at Manchester, you have the first tour nerves. You got sloppiness. So it's like they're both cut from the same cloth. Except with a different pair of scissors.
I suppose, but also like
scissors.
Yes, but I suppose that's true. But also, like I said, Freddie is considerably better at Manchester. Like he's a notch above. So in that regard, the vocals alone, you got to put Manchester. I feel like.
Okay. All right.
Like there's no denying it. Freddie is without a doubt stronger at Manchester.
Yeah. Okay.
From what Kieran's saying, the band itself is sloppy at both shows. Yeah. So you're not going to get an edge one way or the other on the band.
So I think Freddie tips it over for me personally.
Yeah.
Freddie's got to tip it over. Plus, son and daughter at Bradford, I think is for sure worse than anything at Manchester. It has to be.
And
in general, it's probably son and daughter from Bradford. You could probably argue that's like the worst thing they played until like I don't know, Japan opera, something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that. Off the top of my head, maybe some of those early opera things, but like other than that, Bradford, son and daughter, like who wants to listen to that? Not me. So.
Well, I had to, and it was torturous.
Oh,
so,
me too.
Yeah, we all did, Greg.
I had to speed correct him, man. I know how it is.
Okay, all right. You convinced me. I'll put Bradford under Manchester, but would you consider Manchester a C tier show with Bradford being behind it?
No.
No.
Manchester gotta be low B, man.
I am
Gotta be.
sticking strong on Manchester low B, Bradford high C.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Manchester will be lowest to B, and then Bradford will be C. Is
Yes.
that is it?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's fair.
I'll
We-
flip flop it.
Yeah,
Hang
that
on.
works. That works.
Oh, I hurt. Okay, so all
Nah,
right,
man,
so
we're respectfully
okay,
agreeing.
okay,
Yeah.
all right. It's like all right. It's like I can't believe you two are ganging up on a poor defensive sick individual who's trying to get through a
Oh,
tear
Greg.
Oh,
Oh,
Greg.
Greg.
Oh, I'm dying over here. But
We all know how you can be. So don't try to play
come on.
this card.
I almost lost my smile. So
Okay.
but, okay. All right. Okay. Okay. You guys convinced me. I moved Bradford lower. It's in C, and Manchester's been upgraded to low B.
Mhm.
Okay. Now I'm going to start Glasgow here, just because I got to make up for that. So for Glasgow, y'all remember the early copies of the show?
Oh boy.
Uh-oh.
One of the absolute worst listening experiences
Yeah.
I ever had to deal with in my history of listening to Queen shows and dealing with listening to performances and going through tapes. Yeah, it was not a pleasant experience. Thankfully, this is a small upgrade, so yeah, it sounds bad, but just imagine how it used to sound. Still pretty bad sounding. So for Glasgow, again, this is one that I'll admit that back in the past, I had liked it more. Maybe I was just feeling sympathetic, or maybe I just couldn't because I couldn't hear shit. I don't know, but yeah, one of these shows I revisited about 8 months or so ago, and okay, it's not the disaster that Bradford is. And yes, Sheer Heart Attacks was released this day. So now, or what, or was it? It was either that day or the day before. But the album had just
It's
come
today,
out.
yeah.
Okay, so the album had just come out. So now people are going to be more familiar with the material now. And for me, this show is better than Bradford by far. However, I still would not rank it as a great show because yes, they're less sloppy. Yes, there's less bad. But now it's like one of those shows where, okay, let's hang back a bit on here. Let's kind of let's take our foot off the gas and kind of not necessarily coast, but let's play it a little safer. Now I don't know if that's because there were more tech issues or they were trying to avoid tech issues. I don't know, but the vibe I got from Glasgow is they took things a little easier on these songs. They're not playing with nearly the same amount of intensity or drive. It's a little more safe. Freddie does sound better. He sounds better than Bradford. Sounds better than Manchester, but he still has issues. With the darker tone. Now I'm here. It's not a disaster like some of these other versions, but you still have John not knowing the bass, so boo. But it could be worse, I suppose. Then you have Father and Son's really really good considering the quality. And yeah, the playing from Brian I've heard better, but the solo is at least very very solid. But generally, the show is an upgrade from Bradford without being a truly great show. It's just, it's decent. It's okay with some strong moments, but there's still some issues with this show. At least son and daughter isn't as painful to listen to. So the harmonies are better, but they're still not completely dialed in. And then Seven Seas Arise, very strong. Stone Cold Crazy has erratic guitar playing during the solo. Don't know what that's about, but we can ask Dr. May about it. Maybe on a soapbox. And then Liar. Now, Liar is interesting because on one hand, it's fine, but a fine Liar performance for Sheer Heart Attack era of 74, 75 even, it's not good enough really to, as a standout. Like, it gets the job done, it's okay, but there's not a lot really going on with it in comparison to some of these other versions. Like Sheffield's version is awesome. This one is really safe. It's just there. In the Lap of the Gods Revisited, strong vocals, but the lyrics are a bit of an issue. And Freddie still sounds enthusiastic, especially in the encores. Ogre Battle, I don't know how this happens, but Brian skips a section of the song, which then causes the band to shorten the song up.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And
It's a shame too, because the vocals are some of the best of the tour. For that
yeah,
song.
yeah. So it's like, yeah, is it a bad show? No. Is it Bradford bad or at that level? No. But it's not great. I would stick Glasgow in B tier. But it would definitely be on the lower end of B. I would put it above Manchester because they're not as sloppy. And then Sheffield, the highs are higher. There's more inspired playing despite more issues. Here it's safe. And there's some really questionable shit going on at the show too. So I got Sheffield at low, not lowest B, but kind of lower end of B. I'll stick Glasgow just underneath Sheffield, but above Manchester.
So like mid tier B, right?
Yeah.
Well, in the middle of both. So they're all in the B tier, but I would put Manchester at lowest B. Like B, if I were to grade it on a paper, for example, Manchester would be a B minus.
Yeah.
Glasgow would be an 81% or something, and then Sheffield would be 82% B minus, borderline going into solid B without the minus on it, kind of like that. So
that's quite the grading system there, Greg.
well, that's how we graded papers over here. So now with pluses and minuses, Joseph, we're from the same country. You should know what I'm talking about.
I'm a teacher and I don't know what the heck you're talking about.
What?
My guy's going 82%, but without the minus. Boy, what are you talking about right now?
This man's grading on a curve over here.
Yeah, goddamn.
Oh wait, how do you rank papers then?
I would just say B minus B. That's it.
Yeah.
Whatever. I like doing the numbers because it makes me sound smart. Now go ahead. Kieran, talk about Glasgow.
Talk about Glasgow. You got it, man. Glasgow. It is a show that exists. Yeah, Glasgow. What can I say? It's not. It's a less remarkable one for the time, but because of kind of those safeness things that Greg kind of pointed out, you got a lot less sloppiness here. Freddie definitely sounds better than Bradford. And within this show, despite there not being too many highlights, you do have one of the definitive versions of In the Lap of the Gods Revisited, as far as if you're trying to find a version that, doesn't have the really cool phrasings that the Racist Tour versions have, those really high, really interesting phrasings, or, the more interesting improv intros of the later renditions. If you're just looking for one that's kind of just a recreation of the studio version, this is the one. It has the falsetto, but it also has. This is something that a lot of people miss. Freddie's trying the falsetto in the first chorus on Want me to be. This is the only tape where we have where he's doing that. In terms of the raw tapes, outside of Edinburgh in 1976, like as far as the 70s versions go, this is the only one we have where he does that. So that's pretty interesting. So yeah, if you're trying to find a version that's kind of close to the record, this is the go-to one. But yeah, this show's not really worth revisiting because it's kind of mid tier, like we were saying. Nothing remarkable, but nothing very offensive. It's a show that exists on a shitty tape. I'd put it in slap dab in the middle B. Pretty solid ass show. Nothing quite goes wrong, but the band are not totally exceptional here. So yeah. Oh, and on another note, I'd like to point this out. This is, or was it Sheffield? We didn't point it out earlier, but one of the shows they swapped Stone Cold Crazy and Liar. It was Sheffield. None of us pointed that out, but yeah.
Huh.
At the earlier shows they do Liar and then Stone Cold Crazy, but then from Sheffield onwards they do Stone Cold Crazy and then Liar. So yeah. But yeah, slap dab in the middle B. That's where I'd put it.
Joseph.
Yeah, Kieran pretty much said exactly what I think. It's a fairly unremarkable show on a very, very poor sounding recording. Not the worst recording I've ever heard, but it's pretty bad. As far as highlights, I think Seven Seas of Rye is great at this show. But other than that, you're not going to find, other than Lap Revisited, like Kieran mentioned, you're not going to find a lot of definitive versions at this show, but you're also not going to find really any train wrecks like we talked about at Bradford.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I think this is solidly in the B tier.
Yeah. Yeah. Nothing much more to add there. Yeah, we all agree it's somewhere in the B tier, and it's not the train wreck that Bradford was. And I don't want to ever have to go through that again. But so, Joseph, you want to start talking about Rainbow?
Yeah, sure. So, my background with this show, this is the first show I ever heard from this tour, specifically because of the official release. So when I was really, really kind of digging my claws into Queen, which Greg was infamous for helping me do so in the months leading up to me going off to college, it was pretty much just all day me and Greg sitting on Facebook Messenger, him sending me shows, and it was amazing, and it was really great to be able to get into all those shows. But as far as the sheer Heart Attack tour goes, Live at the Rainbow was really my introduction to a lot of these songs as well. I wasn't as familiar with early Queen as I was with, let's say, Night at the Opera on. So this was really my introduction to a lot of these songs, and because of that, it really kind of, I'm emotionally attached to this show. I'm very biased when it comes to this show, as you're going to see. Not only to the official release, but also to the two recordings, both the 3-track and the 5-track recording of the shows at the Rainbow. I think the band sounds amazing. I think Freddie sounds great. Unfortunately, we will have to put an asterisk on that because we do not have a raw, untouched up version of these shows. It's not like some of the later official releases where we do have unofficial audience recordings, complete unofficial audience recordings of those shows. We don't have that for these shows, so we just kind of have to trust the both the official release as well as the 3-track and the 5-track, that they are, depending on who you ask, how much overdubbing there really was. For me, I think these are solid. For me, I'd say S tier, but just because of the asterisk, I would argue an A probably. I think these are great shows, and I think that the recordings that we have of them, as biased as they may be, I think they're great recordings.
Yeah, I love the Rainbow stuff, and yeah, you're completely correct in what you said, because yeah, this was when I was getting into the Queen Live stuff a long time ago. I'll tell you how long ago this was. When I first started listening to Queen live performances, um, you know, Adam Lambert was on American Idol. So, so yeah, that's dating me. You know, bad, and I didn't even have a smartphone. I had a flip phone. And yeah, so yeah, I love the Rainbow Show on its own merit. Like if I were to, not bring in the edits and the overdubs and the pitch correction and all that stuff, and just take the official like tagline out of it and just watch it and listen to it on its own merit. It's awesome. I love it. It's a great early representation of Queen. It's a great, look at the band during their early days. And if people haven't gotten the Live at the Rainbow official release with the March and the November stuff, please go out and get it. That is one of the absolute best Queen releases that you can possibly get in terms of an official product. I would go so far as saying that it probably is the best official release.
It's my favorite.
In terms of concerts, Queen concerts. Yes, I'm not happy with the fact that things were tampered with, but something's better than nothing. So
but every release that they ever did was so
right.
It wasn't unusual.
No, but you know me, I love my raw tapes. So, but yeah, I love Rainbow. As you said, I will put an asterisk on it. I do think it, obviously part of me wants to put it at S with an asterisk, but then another part of me is like, put it at the top A show and just keep it there with an asterisk on it because, who knows if there's a raw version out there. Because if I put something extremely high up on a chart like that and then we get a raw tape and it's like, oh, wow, this doesn't sound like the official release. I'd be kind of have egg on my face. So just to be on the safe side, this is just me personally. I will put it at the top A, so it'll be above all the other shows in that aspect on the TierMaker, but it'll be in its own category because it's an official release that we do not have raw documentation of. And on one hand, it can be compared to the other shows. On the other hand, treat it separately from the raw shows. So I'm just going to stick Rainbow. I agree with you. A, but top A with an asterisk on it, subject to change. Hopefully there's a raw tape out there, but regardless, I still enjoy Rainbow for what it is. I still enjoy Freddie's vocal performances, his early stage persona, the heaviness and rawness of the early band. And yeah, they're so tight. It's awesome. I love Rainbow. And I appreciate it for what it is. Kieran.
Yeah, so I basically agree with most of the things you guys say. For the Rainbow, very spirited show. The legendary venue, so the vibes are just right. You can just feel the atmosphere buzzing. Despite the fact that Brian has gone on the record saying they actually kind of hated playing these shows because they felt the film crew got in their way. But you can't really feel that, at least on the release, which is nice. Liar on the first night's version that we have. You gotta love that whole Great King Rat section. It wasn't in the set list by this point, but they're essentially playing a whole bit of the song tonight, which is very unique. I'm gonna have to say though, yeah, no raw material to compare with, yada 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 yada. It's gotta go in A. And then at the same time too, we kind of know how Liar went down on the second night. That is the infamous power outage one. So a show with that, at least for the second night, that happening, I don't know if that can be S, man. At least the second night. So, because remember, we do have a little bit of that power outage one from I think it was in Days of Our Lives or something.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I'm gonna agree with you guys. Just keep that in A. But in full, maybe one of these nights could be S, perhaps, and totally possible. It's just kind of hard to work with because the release is such a big mix of the two nights.
Yeah.
But yeah, great shows. Love the vibes. Lots of memorable stuff.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. And I always liked it. Even when I was getting into Queen early on, in the late 2000s, I always liked watching, the Rainbow stuff. You know,
Oh
on
yeah,
the
that's the big thing for
Mhm.
Rainbow
The
too. I
old
think.
VHS.
Yeah, I think the enjoyability goes up for Rainbow because of the multi-track quality as well. You know,
Mhm.
I feel like you know, as much we just roasted Bradford earlier. You know, let's be real. If Bradford had multi-track quality, it would be an infinitely more enjoyable show. You know,
Oh yeah.
the quality is always a factor in some regard. Um, so despite all that, Rainbow is definitely a very tight show from what it seems, from what we can assume is Raw. Seems to be one of the tightest, if not the tightest show from this European tour, which is great. And like I said, man, you gotta love those hometown vibes. You know, back in London, you know, at the legendary venue. You know, it kind of just has that, you know, like we made it vibe to it. You know, like damn, we're really killing it. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
A tier.
and like I definitely agree about the whole multi-track thing. I've gotten a lot better with it, but when I was really first starting to get into collecting audio from different bands, I had an unabashed bias towards multi-tracks and soundboards. Like, just audibly, it's better to listen to. So I'm gonna forgive a lot more on a multi-track than I am on a shitty audience recording. I can hear the high points of a lot of audience recordings, but I usually, more often than not, are more critical of a bad audience recording than I would be of that exact same show on a multi-track or on a soundboard.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that really affects how I would rank a lot of these shows, I would argue that it doesn't, because for a lot of these, the highs that we've talked about are very visible in the audience recording, but at the same time, the only true multi-track we have, it has that asterisk because we don't have what it truly sounded like.
So yeah, glad we all agree. It seems to be the A tier spot for this one.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I look forward to the day where excuse me.
Bless you.
Greg's dying.
Yep. Plague. Bring out your dead.
I'm still alive. But
you could say he's still standing.
Yeah. So before I die, I want to start Cologne here. So for Cologne, now this was a fun listen going back to this one, because thankfully, before I started to work on it and listen to it, I got stopped by somebody because I was listening to the wrong version of the show. Because
I'm not a big fan of the Warder one personally. It's
Yeah, so I was listening.
Not a great remaster in my opinion.
Yeah, so I was listening to the quote unquote recommended download of the show, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna listen to this, and I'm gonna talk about it. I'm gonna upload it and everything. And then Kieran's like, oh wait, what version did you download? I'm like, oh, I downloaded the one with the star, the recommended one. Because it kind of makes sense. You download the one that says recommended, right? Well, it turns out no, because I get met with comments like, oh, that's shit. You need to download this version. And I'm like, what?
No, it depends. Some people are a fan of the Warder remaster. It's just, I don't know. If you're someone like me, I feel like a lot of remasters for audience recordings nowadays, they suck. People are like, let's just reduce the hiss. Now it sounds better because there's no hiss, but you're just destroying the dynamics of the sound, yada, yada, yada. So I think in that regard, Cologne's tape raw on its own already sounds great, so I don't really think there's much to mess with. So, I gave Greg my speed corrected copy of the raw tape rather than.
So basically,
like I said, some people do like the Warder remaster. Everyone has their preferences, but at least in my case, I don't think it's a very, very nice remaster.
Well, so basically, I was about to listen to the wrong version, and then Canada's hero over here decides to say, hey, don't download that shit, download this version. So he points me in the direction of his speed corrected copy of the master tape, and there's nothing altered on except for the speed. So I'm like, oh, I get to hear it actually how it is intended to sound, except it has the right speed on it. So I'm like, okay, I'll take your word, and I listen to it, and I'm like, well, Yeah, I'll stick with this version. So I kept the speed corrected raw tape because it just sounded better. Um, but also for the show, I liked the show a lot. Don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of little things on this show which kind of bump the ranking down.
It's a pattern of this tour leg.
Yeah,
like I said, man. I think I really have a hunch feeling that we'll never get the answer to this question, but I really have a hunch feeling the band just had some faulty monitors or something on this tour. There had to be something wrong. Did this happen on the regular? I don't think this had to have been like a band playing thing. I feel like this to a point this had to have just been like something's wrong with your equipment, guys. You might want to look into it, you know.
Well, that's probably why the lorry driver crashed the lorry in Sweden and destroyed the equipment. So I can understand, but
that's just my guess, though. I feel like there had to have been just faulty equipment they had this tour. Like that, like I said, we'll never know the answer. It's not like we can ask Brian, like, hey, do you remember 50 years ago when you did this tour? If you had faulty equipment, he's not going to remember the fucking answer to that question. So we just kind of have to use our best judgment to assume. I feel like.
It's even more strange that it's in England, or particularly the UK, for most of the tour now. I mean, now we're on a show in mainland Europe, but it would be different if it was, say, an American tour where they rented equipment in a completely different continent and were stuck with it. They're in their own territory here, particularly in the early part of the tour.
They had something wrong, man.
Something was wrong. Like, clearly.
Yeah, and plus they didn't necessarily have the finances to fix whatever.
Exactly.
So
that's how I've been thinking of it. I feel like they couldn't afford to fix it, so they had to work with what they had. That's my guess.
Yeah. Either couldn't afford to fix it or couldn't afford to get new equipment.
Yeah, so it's like it's a shame too, because if you get enough of that going on, it can really hurt shows. And so
Bradford.
I know.
I'm sorry. Did somebody say something?
You were talking, but
I don't remember anything.
I do. But
I'm sure.
But so yeah, for Cologne, I like the show. However, you know, it's kind of pains me to say it because I actually like this one a lot more than just about all the other ones. I got to point out that we still have some hiccups here. Now, admittedly, they're not as bad as what we hear in November. So I think, because we seriously lack tapes from this tour leg, because after Glasgow, not counting the Rainbow stuff, the next available audience recording we can go off of would have been this show, Cologne. So, yeah, we're missing a lot of shows.
Yeah, there's a large gap.
We're missing a month.
We're missing a lot of shows.
Almost a month, yeah.
Yeah, we're missing shows from Finland, Sweden, Germany. You know, it's like we're missing a lot. And so it's really hard to kind of paint a picture because we don't have all the pieces of the puzzle. But I suspect if the Rainbow show wasn't so doctored to where maybe the band prowess was close to what it actually was on the official release, I really think the band really tightened their act up during the later parts of November. Because comparing Cologne to earlier shows, you know, I'll skip Bradford because that's not really a fair comparison, but say we compare Cologne to, you know, something like, you know, Sheffield or Manchester even, or even Liverpool. And I like Liverpool, don't get me wrong. But if I were to compare the Liverpool band versus the Cologne band, they're much more in the pocket. They're more musically, quote unquote, on fire and spicy. Like they're taking more chances. Brian and Roger are more creative with their instruments, and they're doing more. And it's like they sound great. Now there's some hiccups here where now I'm here. You know, Joseph loved pointing this out. Now I'm here again. We got some issues. The desync moment, but admittedly it's not as bad as some of the other versions. White Queen's really good from Cologne.
Beautiful version.
Yes.
Mhm.
And in a lap of the gods, the normal version, that by far from what we have on the available tapes, that is the definitive one because Roger is it's the closest he gets to nailing everything with his screams. And I know Rainbows is doctored up and pitch corrected.
Oh, hella fixed up. That shit is not real.
Yeah. So
No way.
it's like, yeah, the show as a whole I really like. But man, there's still a couple sore spots that I gotta talk about. Bring back that Leroy Brown. Wow. You get that awkward moment where Brian's fumbling through it, and then there's like complete silence on stage, like no one knows what to do. And it's like, oh, ow. And then Flick of the Wrist has some issues with it at the beginning, but things do smooth out as the song goes on. And then March of the Black Queen's a little bit iffy in spots. And then Seven Seas of Rye, again, not completely clean, but it's very energetic and it's mostly good, even though there's some issues. Liar, I think, is one of the best performances of the whole night. And yeah, the audience member is really happy finally after shouting liar through the whole thing. Finally gets their their wish. Liar is awesome because it just builds and builds and builds and builds. And once you get to the instrumental breakdown, it's like classic raw early Queen. And I love that version. That's one of my absolute favorite versions to listen to during this time frame. And In the Lap of the Gods Revisited, again, better than a lot of the earlier versions. More stable vocals, less uncomfortable vocal moments. The outro is a lot better compared to earlier in the tour. Modern Times Rock and Roll is awesome. Jailhouse Rock is one of the definitive ones out there too. So yes, there are some low sloppy spots, but there's not as much as some of those other shows in November, and the highs are more frequent, and on average, it's just better. Now, where I would rank it is the tough question because Liverpool, they're less slop, like there's less mistakes at Liverpool, but Cologne has more gutsy playing when things are on. And it's kind of a precursor to another show on this tour. But yeah, for me, Cologne, I like it, but I do realize that it's not faultless and there's issues. Okay, Liverpool's at low A. I want to stick Cologne. Okay, because there's those two major sloppy moments in the show. I want to stick Cologne at the highest level of B possible, just barely missing A. Because it has potential to go up there, but there's just some moments at the show that are just a little cringeworthy. But all in all, I still really like the show, and it's still strong. So highest level of B for me, and I do consider it one of my favorites from the tour. Joseph.
So I did a quick little Google search here, and between if we're not counting the Rainbow shows because we do not have any undoctored recordings, between Glasgow on November 8th and Cologne on December 6th, we are missing 16 shows worth of recordings. That's nuts.
Yeah.
That just right there goes to show you why it sounds like an entirely different band. Because it was. There was more than a dozen shows between the two that we have these audience recordings from that we've just talked about, between Glasgow and Cologne. It's insane the amount of time that is between those two shows, and that all we have from between them is an official recording that we have an asterisk next to. So, that being said, I really like this show. I think this is a really, really strong show, albeit with some missteps that Greg mentioned. I think there's some really good really good versions of In the Lap of the Gods, like Greg said. I think it is the definitive version of In the Lap of the Gods. Stone Cold Crazy is great on the show, and I think the other one that I really want to point out as really strong at the show is Liar. I think that is kind of like my highlights from this show. I really would say a lot of the same flubs that Greg kind of pointed out. But for me overall, I'd actually argue that I would tip this up into low A. I would probably put it right below Liverpool in A. So like low A, but just below Liverpool.
Okay, Kieran?
Yeah, Cologne, very spirited, very fun show, like you guys have been saying, despite all the sloppiness to it. Very, very strong show, I would say, in the grand scheme of things. Despite the sloppiness, for the most part, this is a very consistent show. You have a lot of memorable stuff happening tonight. The definitive In the Lap of the Gods, at least for Roger's part. But it also that version got an incredible solo to it, so it really all comes together. I feel like on that one. Killer Father to Son, despite I think that one has a weird desync on it. That's a very strong version as well. That's a pattern of this tour. A lot of great father to sons happen around this time. One of the best liars of the Sheer Heart Attack tour, which is also great. And another one of the top tier In the Lap of the Gods revisited. So, you got some of those very memorable highlights tonight. You have a pretty nice sounding tape. I have to give the show a low A. For me, myself, I would honestly put Liverpool still above this one, at least from what we have, because I feel like Liverpool is actually more consistent in that regard. It's got a lot less of the weird desyncs and the weird monitor issues, however you want to call it. So I'd give Liverpool the higher grade personally, but who knows? If we got the rest of Liverpool, things could change perhaps. But as it is, I would keep Liverpool above this one, and I would put Cologne in low A.
I completely agree.
All right, I'll bump it up to the lowest of A, so it's just under Liverpool. Now, we get to The Hague, and I'll let Kieran start this one.
Oh, yes. I love this show. This is, from what we have, the most consistent and strongest 74 Sheer Heart Attack show. It really is a shame that we are missing so much because it just makes it so much harder to rank. But what we have on here, I think, without a doubt, has the most tightest playing from the group. Way, way less of the weird sloppiness. I think the most major one I could think of is Now I'm Here yet again has a very strange desync. I don't know what it is. The band are kind of unprepared to play this song this year, but really, and the grand scheme of things, The Hague is a very, very consistent showing of them. Father to Son, I think many have started to agree over the years. It was once a very overlooked version, but in recent times, I think a lot are realizing that this is one of the all-time great versions. This version is incredible. Freddie nails it. Brian and Roger are laying it down. They are just an unstoppable force. White Queen, totally through the roof. Flick of the Wrist, very strong one, despite Freddie not going for some of the studio phrasings anymore. And The Lap of the Gods, even, this one isn't too far off from Cologne's. Roger's falsetto screams on here are actually some of his best showings. So even a song like that is excellent on here. It's very, very interesting to hear such kind of a unenthusiastic crowd, very dead. Like Freddie says, you can hear a pin drop. He says that at some point. So despite that, I don't think it deterred the band one bit. If anything, I think it weirdly made them play stronger because, man, from what we have, they are totally on it tonight. It's very hard to rank this one. If it was complete, who knows? I think it would be S tier material perhaps, but as it is, I got to give this one A to A+.
Yeah, for me in The Hague, this, because I was uploading all the later shows from this tour over the last week, and I wanted to really re-listen to this stuff just to kind of get the cobwebs out of my head and to hopefully get back to my old self. And then I get struck down by freaking illnesses. It's just great. Welcome to 2024. But it is what it is. But I love The Hague. I remember when Killer Queen first dropped, well over about 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago. It was a long time ago. this Killer Queen sample came up, and people were just blown away by it because it was something new. It was something from the Sheer Heart Attack tour of '74, and then eventually a Dutch Queen fan convention were selling um, copies of the show at the convention for everybody to buy. And the fun part about it is Queen Productions gave the stamp of approval. So thanks to them and a generous soul, the public got to hear The Hague. Now we're missing half the show because it was on one side of a tape. But what we do have is just really quite something. Yeah, the crowd does seem reserved, but from reading information, it was far from sold out, and it wasn't promoted right, so there wasn't a lot of people there anyway. And I believe they then said that the show was free to further increase the crowd. So I don't entirely blame the audience, but they do, but they do. But they do, react, with enthusiasm at the end of the songs, and they get more and more actually into the show as it goes on too. So, I would love to hear a full copy of the show, um, just to hear all those end songs. But yeah, The Hague is, out of all the tapes we have, all the raw audience tapes, it's the strongest show that we have from what's available. And hopefully the second half of the show is as strong as the first, if not better, because what we have is just so good and consistent. It's so nice to hear a Sheer Heart Attack show without major fuck ups in it. It's so good to hear, and the band, they're on. They are on. And Freddie sounds great too. And for some reason at this show, I don't know why, but he kind of backs off the darker voice a bit. Now it still shows up in places, but he sounds a little more natural on the material, and there's more dynamics to his voice. I'm like, what the fuck was this voice? This is good, and it helps out because he's consistently strong through what we have. So I really enjoy the show. It's one of the best showings of the band, despite it being incomplete, from this tour leg, and really the only real faults I can find on the show are just a few spots where the harmonies aren't 100%, but it's nowhere near the disaster of like Bradford or some of those other shows. All in all, I love the show. It's excellent. Outside of the Rainbow stuff, because that's its own category, I think The Hague is the strongest show, but I will still put an asterisk on it because we're missing half the show. So yeah, it's above Liverpool because if Cologne is lowest of A and Liverpool is low A, I would say The Hague is a solid A with an asterisk on it. So I look forward to if there is another copy of the show that has everything on it. But from what I'm hearing, it's amazing. For the tour leg.
Yeah, basically like the definitive first half of the set.
Yeah,
I would say.
Yeah. So yeah, this is what the tour standard should have been. So I'll leave it at that. And because by this point the band found their groove, definitely. So love the show, Joseph.
Yeah, I mean, what you guys have said is completely how I feel about it. It's by far the best raw recording we have from this leg of the tour. I think the band is absolutely on fire. Of course, there's some small slip-ups like there would be at any show. You're never going to have a perfect show. But I think this is the band firing on all cylinders at this point in the tour. I'm 100% in agreement with you, Greg, that this is definitely a strong A with an asterisk, whereas I'd argue Rainbow is an A with an asterisk that if we got a full raw recording might go down, unfortunately. I think that this is an A with an asterisk that if we got the full recording most likely would go up. So I think that we are unfortunately underrating this show at A just because we don't have that full show. But
Quite
I
possibly.
feel like if we had the full show, I think this would be a strong contender for S tier at least. But as it stands, I think it's definitely a strong A with an asterisk. So many great performances on this show. Like you guys said, just throughout, it's probably one of the stronger Now I'm Here's we've had. Um, Ogre Battle is definitely one of the best versions on the tour. Father to Son, like you guys have mentioned, Father to Son has been a fairly consistently strong song on this leg of the tour. Another great version here. White Queen is absolutely gorgeous on this show. Probably one of my favorite tracks from this recording is White Queen. And then you get into the medley, and the medley is handled very well here. I think the medley was a little bit was a little bit dicey at Cologne, and I think the medley overall was much stronger here at this show. It's just one where I wish we had that second half of the show so badly.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we got the second half, and if it's on the same if it's at the same ballpark as the first half,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't hesitate to construct an argument to throw it into S.
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure.
And who knows? Maybe it's a show where we got the first half, but the second half's better. So if the second half is better than the first half,
I mean, think
would
about the songs that we don't have on this recording: Stone Cold Crazy, Liar,
Seven Seas of Rye,
Lap
of the Gods Revisited. You know.
Yeah, I mean, those are consistently some really strong songs on this tour. And if that's how the first half of the show sounded, those could be all-time versions of some of those songs.
So if anyone's listening, you have an outsource, you have the rest of the show, hit us up, drop it, thanks.
Yeah, please. Like, we're not rich, but we are rabid.
And my knees work. But
I was gonna say we're not rich, but throw it out there.
Well, that Crazy Tour van, I gotta get some repairs on, but and then I gotta make sure my knees work. But
pro tip: knee pads really help out.
Absolutely, yes.
So he's hurt. He doesn't know, but it's just what he's heard, guys.
Yep. Pro tip: I had knee surgery earlier this year. It really got to take care of those things.
Yeah, watch out for the ACL, PCL, and the meniscus.
Meniscus, it gets you every time.
That's right. Oh, my fucking throat. So the Hague.
That's the other one you have to worry about.
Yeah. It's like that sounded so wrong.
Yes, it did, and I'm loving
it. You ever tried doing a TierMaker sick? But yeah, the Hague. I think we said our piece. Strongest show on this leg.
Hi, baby.
Hi, yep. I think it. Yeah, absolutely. It's right up there. So Joseph, do you want to do the honors and start the last show with a recording from Brussels?
Oh, of course. Unfortunately, when we talk about a show like The Hague, where it's the highest of highs, unfortunately, we have nowhere to go but down. And unfortunately, for the last recording from this leg of the tour, that is what we have to do. You got a bit of a double whammy here. It's a pretty run of the mill conservative show, and it's paired with the fact that the recording quality is absolute shit.
Sounds like another show we ranked earlier.
Yeah, it's Glasgow all over again. It really is. The recording quality is putrid, but it's not a bad show. It's definitely not a great show. It has its moments. There's some good stuff here. Now I'm Here for once is actually a pretty solid opener. Their Ogre Battle a little forced at points. Pretty much what I would just say, like my tagline for this is there's no song that is memorably bad, but you're never going to find a definitive version of any song on this show. I wouldn't say. I think it's a pretty run-of-the-mill average show. Kind of what we said about about Glasgow that the band just sounds a lot more conservative, like they're holding back. That's just what I would say for this show. I'd say like what I said about Glasgow. It's definitely a B tier show. Nothing too bad, but nothing that would really push it any higher than that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. For me in Brussels, it's So would you put it above or under Glasgow for you, Joseph?
Um, I would probably say, hmm, I might put it just a tinge above Glasgow.
Okay, there we go. Um, so yeah, I agree. It's in the B tier overall. Now, where I'll put it on B, that's where I'm kind of gonna have to think a bit here. But for me, Brussels, as you said, I don't think it's a bad show by any means, and it's definitely not the worst thing on the tour. And there's weaker shows, but it's not The Hague. Um, absolutely
Mm-hmm.
not. Absolutely not. Now, what you said about Brussels, I agree with, is because yeah, they are holding back more compared to The Hague, and yeah, it does kind of give you some vibes of those UK shows in November, like Glasgow and some of those other ones where they're holding back, they're kind of playing it safe, and they're not going all out. Now, and also, Freddie just sounds more, Freddie sounds a little more tired and strained compared to The Hague too. So you don't
Mm-hmm.
have as effortless um, vocals on a lot of the stuff. You get more forceful stuff, and it's you know I'm surprised at this point in the tour he hasn't had serious vocal issues,
Yeah.
considering what it's putting his voice through. Because it's it's not a bad show, and it has its really good moments. But yeah, it's there. It's solid, but
Mm-hmm.
it's nothing like, oh wow, you got to listen to this. Because even if the quality was A, I still would say that it doesn't have the definitive versions of songs. And there's just
I'd
little,
almost
yeah.
I'd almost be interested to hear what Barcelona would sound like the show 3 days later, which would have been the last show on this leg. We don't
Yeah.
unfortunately don't have a recording of it. Just the downturn in those couple days between The Hague and Brussels. I'd be almost interested to hear if how Freddie sounds in Barcelona.
I feel like they'd bring it in at Barcelona, just that kind of the late night vibes. I don't know. Queen were very well known for putting on those pretty spectacular final shows on tours for the most part. So
Yeah, could be.
that's just what I think. I feel like
It, it,
Barcelona
it,
might
it could
have,
be the Brussels show was just they were kind of holding back to save it for Barcelona.
yeah, perhaps.
Yeah, because of Brussels, you know, it's basically, yeah, you have solid performances, but you're gonna hear better. Like, for example, Father to Son. Yeah, it's
It's
still
good,
it's
but
strong, it's good, but there's some issues on here. There's better versions earlier on. Now Flick of the Wrist, I think, is really really good from this show, despite the quality being horrible by the second half. Um, in the Lap of the Gods is really really good. Um, but Roger practicing the falsetto wails is always a fun aspect to the performance. Um, but yeah, there's just little things through the show, like little bum notes here and there, and just it's not The Hague. Um, but the issues aren't, admittedly aren't as awkward and as bad as like some of those other ones. So yeah, I do agree it's B tier. Now, where I would put it on B is now the question, because I do think it's a better show than Manchester because they're not as sloppy, obviously. Um, Glasgow, um, there's some highlights on there, but and it still has the plain safe option, but I would argue that Brussels has a few more standout moments compared to Glasgow. And then with Sheffield, there's a few performances that are clearly head and shoulders above just about everything on Brussels, like the Sheffield Lyre and the Son and Daughter, for example. Those clearly will beat anything from Brussels in terms of like the general performance. But then you have the tech issues and stuff going on there. So yeah, Brussels would be B. I do think it's above Glasgow, but I'm not sure if it's gonna go above or below Sheffield. Because Sheffield admittedly has some higher highs, but there's more lower lows. So it's like, it's in that ballpark. So I'll keep Brussels at like lower B, not the lowest B, but lower B above Glasgow. I almost want to tie it with Sheffield, but
I'd argue above Glasgow, but below Sheffield.
Sheffield.
I agree with you. I agree with you that the Sheffield highs are a lot higher than anything on Brussels.
Yeah, that's what's throwing me off, because I can go to Sheffield and immediately say, okay, here's these performances that I would definitely would recommend. With Brussels, it's like, okay, well, there's a handful of solid good ones, but nothing that would be, oh wow, gotta hear this.
Like I'll probably go out of my way to hear Son and Daughter and Lyre from Sheffield. I wouldn't really go out of my way for anything from Brussels.
I'm the same way.
Yeah, so yeah, I would say Brussels is like in that weird category of B where it's like not the lowest B, lower B, kind of above the other two, but kind of poking at Sheffield. But I'll keep it below Sheffield for now, but above the other two. Kieran, what do you think? Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say real quick, to me, Brussels is the epitome of it's a show that happened.
Yeah, so that because of that, what Joseph just said, I'm willing to put Glasgow, honestly, above Brussels. Because on the one hand, too, Brussels isn't complete. We don't even have a big song like Lyre. Like, that's always the big one to hear in the set list. Like, we don't even have that at Brussels, so it's like...
So it's an asterisk B. We don't even know if it's...
So you know what I mean? So, like, honestly, I would put Glasgow above it, but from what it seems, Brussels definitely seems better than Manchester and Bradford, just because the sloppy issues that those shows have. But I'd put Brussels, like, in the absolute middle of B. It's, it's a solid show. Nothing quite goes wrong, but, the boys are never totally blowing your pants off, playing through the roof. They're playing well, they're having fun, but it's a show, nothing more. Just a show that exists. So yeah, but for me, I think, like, for sure, Sheffield has to be better, man. Like, despite Sheffield definitely is more sloppy, but like Greg was saying, Son and Daughter and all the other highs at Sheffield, there's no contest at all that those destroy anything that's on Brussels. So yeah, I would honestly, I would put Brussels right in the slap dab middle of B, put Sheffield, Glasgow above them.
And then put an asterisk on Brussels because we're missing a fair bit of the show.
We're missing Lyre, bro. Like, come on, that's the big one. How are you gonna make me listen to a show with no Lyre, man? What are you, 80s Queen, man?
No, we'll do AI. But
I'm good.
Except for the Works tour. We forgive the Works tour.
No, I don't, because they shortened it, so it gets less points.
What's worse, not playing Lyre at all, or playing a really
or butchering
short version of it?
Yeah, or butchering it, But yeah, no Lyre, so bye-bye.
What I'll say for Sheffield is, yes, it definitely has its sloppiness to it, but at least it has some individuality.
Oh, absolutely.
Brussels doesn't. Brussels is there's a meme that goes around on a lot of music groups that I'm in, where one of the worst things you can say about an album is it's like watching paint dry. Listening to Brussels to me is like watching paint dry.
Yeah, I suppose.
There's
it
nothing
that
that
sticks
so out.
Bad.
Yeah, the tape is awful. So there,
Never want to revisit
I'm immediately less.
Yeah.
I'm immediately like less invested. But even in then, there's nothing musically in this show that grabs me, and just for that, I'd almost be tempted to agree with Kieran and take back what I said and put Glasgow above Brussels.
Yeah,
Well,
for sure. And
because
I-
neither,
I-
yeah,
oh yeah, you can go on.
yeah, because neither of them are outstanding musically, and
No.
they both share the same like general vibe of, well,
General malaise almost.
it's like they're playing it safe.
Yeah.
Yes.
And compare that with the quality. I would say this is more of a completionist show. You know, like unless you're really just trying to hear all the Queen bootlegs just because you want to. You know, if you're one of those people like me or Greg, you just want to hear it all no matter what. You know, there's no really real reason to spin Brussels. You know, you're gonna have a much better time listening to a lot of other shows from this period.
Although to be fair, yes, we all complain about the quality and everything, and it's not great, but holy hell, do you remember the old source of Brussels?
Shit.
Where some copies were so bad it played 2.5 semitones flat on Killer Queen, and it sounded like a freight train.
Let me just close things off for this by saying shout out to Bob's description of the tape. This never gets old. He goes, "This is one of the worst sounding audio recordings ever made in the existence of music." Those are Bob's own words. But I don't know if that's for like the OG copy or what, because
well,
I would have to imagine.
I've heard a fair amount worse than Brussels for sure, but yeah, Brussels it's shit.
It's not great, but yeah, the original Brussels, the old copy, because some of the stuff we hear on this, on the tour, these are upgrades to shows that, that had abysmal quality. So yeah, they may sound bad, but just imagine what I had to sit through 10 years ago, where the original Brussels played 2 to 2.5 semitones flat on some of the tracks, and yeah, I could barely tell you what some of the songs were because it was that bad. And let's not get into the downgrade of Glasgow 75, where I couldn't even tell you what the songs were because it was buried in distortion and hiss. That's bad. So, it's like, I'm just grateful it's listenable to an extent now. Because if we were to do this TierMaker 5 to 10 years ago, oh Lord, I'd be struggling.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
So I guess we got it all ranked now, eh?
Yeah, we have all 9 shows ranked, and from greatest show to the least greatest show, we have, for the A tier, we have Rainbow. Even though that's an asterisk in its own category. Then for the Raw tapes, we have The Hague, Liverpool, and Cologne. And then from the B tier, the highest B is Sheffield, and then we have Glasgow, Brussels, and then Manchester. And then in C tier, all alone, sitting in the corner, figuring out their harmonies and issues, it's Bradford. So poor Bradford stuck all alone.
Yep. It needs to go sit in the corner and think about what it's done.
I mean, yeah, I'm sorry, Brad.
Get a damn tape upgrade.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, Bradford, but just didn't deliver that night. Or the tech issues were too great.
Yeah. Overall, I'm pretty satisfied with those rankings. Like that's essentially identical to mine, but for me, The Hague's above Rainbow, and then I still think Bradford is a low B instead of C. But other than that, that's identical to. Yeah, I agree with it. Good shit.
Yeah. The only thing, my own personal TierMaker wouldn't have been too much different. It would be a couple shows would have been like half mark higher or lower, but it wouldn't be a drastic difference from the collaborative TierMaker. And of course, I got you two ganging up on a poor sick individual about Manchester 74 and Bradford. So it's like, it's like, I can't believe you two had to gang up on me like that. But then eventually I'm like, okay, you convinced me. You know, I'm gonna drop the old man yelling on get off my lawn here. So
That's just in closing. Say what you will. Bradford is worse than Manchester. That's what we have to take away from this.
yeah, well, Bradford, I wanted to keep
Yeah.
in B because it started with B. So I mean, but you know, that's probably not a good enough argument. But
It's not. It's not.
no, okay,
But yeah,
No.
satisfied with it.
Yep. Yeah.
yeah,
No, this,
I would say yeah, I'm very happy with everything, and it's like I may be sick and dying right now, but it's like I felt that out of the three Queen TierMakers, this was the best one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is.
Well,
the
you're
end.
welcome.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
you
this
know,
was fun.
I was gonna get to the rest of it, but since you had to jump ahead, you know, it's like yeah, it's like way to ruin a feel good moment.
Anytime.
Anytime. So yeah, I had a lot of fun, and definitely enjoyed myself, and it was definitely fun to revisit these shows and do the tier maker, and despite the delays and rescheduling, I think we pulled it off very well,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and
Hopefully, you won't have to recover from any nodule surgery anytime soon. Hopefully, your voice recovers well.
well, yeah, well, it's just sore throat and various other symptoms. It's just hopefully I feel better, but if I don't, I went out with a bang. So
So this is goodbye, huh?
Quite like Freddy on the 74 leg of the sheer heart attack tour.
Basically.
Yeah, there we go. And so yeah, this was great. And definitely doing tier makers with I would say the more people you get on with tier makers, I think the better it is, because when you get like three people upwards, I think things just really start gelling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Together.
that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say it's the strongest tier maker we've so far. And
Hope you guys enjoyed watching this.
Yeah. Hope you guys everybody enjoyed it. And now that we've gotten this pesky sheer heart attack stuff out of the way, it's time to return to the age-old question: did Freddy hit the high C?
Okay, will you stop that?
You guys might need to fight this one out.
Okay.
No. Anyway.
All right. Okay. First
I'm
of all,
about to go eat dinner. Maybe you guys can go wrestle this one out.
Uh-huh. I knew that one would get Greg going.
Well, okay. Well. First of all, he's working me here because
I'm just gonna walk out of this. I'm gonna walk out of this. You guys can battle this.
No. It's fine. The thing is, I had gotten over that embarrassment, but now it's like let's bring it up again.
Just having to bring it back up.
Hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm gonna go eat my dinner.
All right.
Go. Me as well. I'm being called.
All right. Before I head off, let me pause the stuff. We'll stop the stuff so it records right. So see you all later.
Farewell.
See you guys later.